GameSpot presents the Hotspot. It is Wednesday, January 25th. I am Tom MAGRINO. As you will notice, I am not sitting behind the board. That honor has fallen to Benito Gonzalez.
Hello.
Benito, how are you doing?
Doing all right.
Benito used to do this for CNET, and I've decided that it's stupid for me to be doing it when we have such a nice professional over here. But moving on, we also have Kevin VANORD. How are you doing, Kevin?
Oh, halo.
How you? Halo?
I'm doing great.
It's fine, because I have this.
It's a mix.
We'll get to that. Thomas McShea, how are you doing?
I'm good.
You're good. Also, the man of the hour, special guest today is Chris Hecker. Chris, you created Spore. Is that right? No?
From ground up.
Sorry.
You programmed it from the...
Spore.
I'm 1/120th of the creation of Spore.
Okay. Chris,
I don't know if that's not weighted.
Not weighted at all. Chris is best known, well, not best known. He worked on Spore. He always gives a GDC rant. Well, not always. Is it mostly?
I have always given a GDC rant. I usually give a GDC lecture as well, unless I'm insanely busy, and then I just do the rant.
But, then you just do the rant. But that invariably involves saying you,
sticking
not
my
one
foot in
person
my
has
mouth.
created and sticking like
pissing off the internet.
There was something about taping game cubes together and other things.
I'm sure we'll get to that.
Were wildly taken out of context. But
yes,
that is not what we're here to talk about today. What we are here to talk about today is your new game, Spy Party.
Indeed.
Sort of. Well, I mean, I want to talk about Spy Party, and I kind of want to, I mean, you're a very smart guy and know a lot about game design. We'll get all to that. But first of all, just to get kind of the ball rolling, what is Spy Party, your latest game, and how is it different than Assassin's Creed or the ship or the game called Spy Party?
Okay, so we'll start with Assassin's Creed and the ship because it's easy to start there. So those games are versions of a college campus game that's an old college campus game called Assassin, right? And you probably heard it if you went to college, where everybody puts their name in a hat, and then you draw a name, and then I draw a name, and like you might have drawn my name, and I might have drawn Tom's name, and then Tom drew Kevin's name, and so you're trying to kill me, and I'm trying to kill him, but I'm trying not to get. I don't know who's trying to kill me, right? Okay. And so it's like this big circle.
It's glorified LARPing, basically.
Well, I mean, LARPing is just any kind of role playing kind of thing, but it's basically like, I'm hunting you, and I'm also being hunted simultaneously by someone I don't know, right? And so it's a really cool game. But the problem with that game, or what I felt like was one of the flaws of that game, and you can see it in the ship and in Brotherhood, and now Revelations, is that because you're always hunting and hunted simultaneously, you can never really get into the role of either one of those. You're never either like, trying to figure out who's hunting you or hunting with, you'll be on the trail of somebody and then boom, you're dead. Okay, I got to restart everything, right? So by contrast, Spy Party,
which we have all read the manual for, by the way.
Yeah, oh good. So the 4-page instruction manual.
I intentionally sent it around.
Awesome.
Just to preempt any of
Yeah, I wonder how true that will be of players in general. I'm going to have to make it. I'm going to have to. Oh, good.
I'll link it on the page.
I'm going to have to make it a little more accessible later. But I'm trying to do this, what I call... Rob Pardo, who's the chief designer of Blizzard, gave this lecture at Austin GDC ages ago. Like it was actually while I was on Spore, and he talked about their depth first, accessibility later design style, where they basically go for the hardcore. Like, what's the 500-hour game first? Like, it doesn't matter if it's accessible because you can always make it accessible later. And so you try and find that really hardcore player skill competitive game first, then you can layer on the accessibility, because the theory being that getting a really awesome Counter-Strike Go level, StarCraft level player skill competitive game is really hard, whereas accessibility is something you can actually like play test for and do a bunch of stuff. And so we were in the middle of Spore when we were doing that. When that talk came across Gamasutra or whatever, and I read it, I was like, oh man, this is so what we're doing wrong here on Spore. We're like working on accessibility all the time, but we never got to the depth. So we kind of did, like, in some sense, accessibility first, depth never. Except for in one part, and the part that one of the parts that I was working on with a bunch of other people the most, the creature editor, which I think most people consider the coolest part of Spore. Actually, we did do depth first. Like, you could do, it was very hard to use, but we could do an incredibly varied set of creatures, and then we made it more accessible. And so I feel like the part of it that worked best, we actually did do the depth first, accessibility later. So when I started working on Spy Party, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going 100% on this depth first, accessibility later thing. And so the 4-page instruction manual that everyone that like kind of, I get press about the fact that I have a manual, because what games have manuals anymore? Which is great.
Games that aren't even out yet.
Yes, exactly.
We're done.
Exactly. So people are just shocked. And like when I set it up at PAX the first time, which is why I printed out the manual, I'm like, no one's gonna have any idea how to play this game. And so I was like, you can't play the game unless you read the manual. Like, what do you mean? Let me sit down. I'm like, no, you have to read this manual. This is like are you kidding me? But it was great because there ended up being a line, so there was time for people to read the manual and they could kind of see. But anyway, so back to the question. So Spy Party is completely asymmetric. So Brotherhood, the ship, or Assassin, the kind of template game that these are based on, was a totally symmetric game. Your relationship to another person was asymmetric in the sense that you might be hunted by that person or hunting that person or no relationship at all. But everyone is both hunted simultaneously and the hunter. Whereas in Spy Party, to use those terms, there's one person who's hunted and one person who's a hunter, period. And that person who is hunted can never retaliate against the hunter and vice versa. So the overall idea is there's a kind of Casino Royale-esque, cocktail party like James Bond. Like there's all the usual suspects there, like the James Bond guy with the tuxedo is really suave and debonair. The Miss Marple old dowager, the ingenue in the slip dress, the chic from the oil country, the Banana Republic general, all the usual just total tropes of spy and mystery films, right? And these people are all at a party, a cocktail party, just having drinks and doing the normal things you do at a cocktail party, looking at the artwork, looking at a book, reading a magazine and the thing, looking out at the grounds of the mansion, whatever. One person who's the spy, and I'll just explain the two-player version first, which is the only version that works right now, but eventually there'll be multiple different game modes. But the core mechanic, that like depth first one that I'm going for, one person's a spy. The spy takes control over one of those characters and acts like they're at the party. They pretend like they're having drinks, or they're really having drinks, or they go look at the artwork and do all these things, have conversations, flirt with people, and then. But while they're doing it, they're also trying to accomplish spy missions, which are another set of tropes from spy and mystery films, like bug the ambassador, poison the drink, steal the statue, replace the microfilm, steal the nuclear plans, all those kinds of things. And you have to be doing this while pretending like you're at the party. Looking in from outside the party is the other player, who's called the sniper, and they're literally looking in through the windows, or if it's on a balcony, they have a clear shot. But they have to look around and they can hear in the party and whatnot. But all they see is this party, and they're trying to figure out who the spy is and identify them and shoot them before the time is up. So the spy has to accomplish these missions within a certain time frame, and the sniper has to figure out who is acting funny at the party and terminate them, basically.
And it's like you have the computer doing pretty much everything that the spy should be doing.
All the characters at the party are NPCs except for the spy, and so the spy can do everything the NPCs can do plus the spy missions. The NPCs will never do spy missions, but they'll do things that look close to spy missions, like they might put their arm around somebody or things like that, which you could confuse if you weren't looking really carefully with the bugging, placing the bug on somebody. And so the game actually feels very different from the ship in Brotherhood because you have these two very different roles, and you can relax into your role. So the spy role is very performative. You're just trying to play it cool and perform, right? Whereas the sniper is just perception. And so all you're doing is all your faculties are geared towards trying to figure out who this is. And there's just this, you think it might be easy because a person versus an NPC, but I give the NPCs little ticks, like they might adjust a little bit or scoot a little bit, things like that. But for the most part, it's just that you're snowed under with information. So you're basically trying to sort through this incredible hurricane of information coming at you, visual information and audio. There's all different kinds of tells. There's visual ones, there's audio ones, there's ones that are just like things that are just out of order behaviors that the NPCs would never do in that same way, but they're made up of pieces of behavior that the NPCs would do, things like that. So basically those two roles are just very different in the fact that you aren't mixing both. Like the spy can never get to the sniper. Like the sniper does not have to watch his back like you do all the time in Brotherhood or whatever. Right. And so it allows you to really I can go way deeper on the gameplay of each individual role, which I found really compelling. So that's what's very different about it.
It's really interesting, too. 'Cause I haven't actually played the game, but I have seen videos of people playing it. But the thing it's obviously not even
I should set it up right here. We got an hour.
Right? But what I noticed when I was watching it is, that might sound like, oh, it's probably low intensity, but it's actually, super tense, and, I feel, completely focused on, especially when, the sniper is looking for the it's like there's this whole obfuscation thing going on.
Different people find the different roles more stressful. I can't really predict ahead of time based on the kind of person they are, if I know them even as a friend, which role they'll find more stressful, because a lot of people are like, oh my God, there's some dude out there and he's going to shoot me. And as the spy, you can see the laser sight. So you can see the center of the screen of where the sniper's looking at any given time. Now, the field of view of the sniper is pretty wide, so you don't know they're looking right where the laser is. So advanced snipers use it to like, so newbie players, if the laser sight comes across their head, they basically change direction.
Right.
They're like, ah! And so like,
As they should.
but
in real life.
a good player like doesn't let it affect them at
play it
all.
cool.
Right, they play it cool. And so there's this really like, it's very different from most video games where there's this, it's kind of like that. If you imagine like the anecdote I use all the time is like, imagine like the way Hitchcock would shoot a scene in which like a guy was cheating on his wife and like left the wine glass with the mistress's lipstick on the mantle, right? And then the wife comes home like, and then he notices the wine glass, right? And he has to just play it cool, because if he goes over and moves the wine glass, he's totally hosed. And Hitchcock would shoot that with the wine glass in view, every scene with between them, and be like, "Oh, honey, I gotta, whatever." And it feels a bit like that, where you're like, you make a mistake, and you just have to, like in most games, you make a mistake and then you just go correct it. Oh, I'm a little bit to the left, I'll go to the right, whatever. Here, if you walk up to a conversation, for example, and you're a little bit off from where you want to be, you just have to basically wait.
Right.
Because if you start adjusting and everything, you look different from the other player, from the NPCs. And so, so you've got this completely different kind of vibe. And the game, like Jonathan Blow, we work together a lot on, on our indie games.
Friend of the show, Jonathan Blow.
He said it's like chewing nails, basically. Like it's more intense than Counter-Strike in that like stress. And so actually, it's very early in the development right now. I'm about to do this paid beta, open beta thing. We can talk about that later. Right. But basically, I'm gonna have to leaven it with a little bit of like humor. I'm gonna keep the gameplay the same, as deep and hardcore as possible. But just because there's gonna have to be some breaks, because it's just basically too tense. Like people get up sweating from a couple games in this. Yeah.
And one of the analogies, to get back to the Hitchcock thing, one of the analogies that made it click for me is like it's a reverse Turing test.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, not a lot of people know what the Turing test is if they're not computer people. So, like, we'll explain it briefly. Like, Alan Turing was like one of the fathers of computer science. Like, he, was a code breaker in World War II for Britain and things like that. But, and he came up with this idea. So basically back then, the concept of artificial intelligence was a big deal, and like how will we know when computers are really smart versus not? And he came up with this very simple test, which is basically if you can have basically an IM chat conversation with someone and you don't know whether they're a computer or not, they've passed the Turing test. And that's basically impossible right now. Like we're not even remotely close. We're 50 or 100 years away from doing that. I'm actually, a lot of people believe it's not possible, period. I'm actually a believer in strong AI, which is the kind of concept of that, whether you'll be able to make intelligent computers. I actually think that's true, but we're just so far away, it's not even funny. That said, if you flip it on its backwards, like it does become possible. A person can pretend to be like a computer. I mean, kids do that all the time. I talk like a robot, things like that. And so you can take it to this, lift it to this behavioral level in like Spy Party, and it becomes really interesting. All of a sudden, there's gameplay there. So you take this completely impossible computer science problem, reverse it, and you get a game out of it, because the act of performing as one of these NPCs is actually strangely compelling. You're like, okay, I know they're not moving. I gotta. So like one of my elite sniper players, I've got some like, because when you're doing a Counter-Strike or StarCraft level game, which I hope it to be, like that level of competitive skill, you've got to have like, really hardcore playtesters. Like, so my two hardest core playtesters are guys named Ian and Paul. They're both game designers themselves. One works at Riot and one works at EA. But they've played for about 12 or 15 hours, game time. And they're still, this game is still changing for them. So that's a great sign, right? I mean, 12 or 15 hours is not enough you need 300 hours to get it to be a game like StarCraft or Counter-Strike, but like you got to start somewhere. And so Ian was shooting Paul at one point, and like we made, basically Ian's the sniper player. At that point, they've specialized, right? So Paul's the spy player and Ian's the sniper player. I usually make newbies play both so they can get a feel, because it's not clear which one you're going to like better before. Ian started shooting Paul and a bunch of times in a row, and he was like, "Oh, what's the new thing that's a tell?" And he's like, "Oh, when you go into a conversation group, you start talking too fast." Right? So like he walks into a conversation and the NPCs all kind of like chill out, wait, and then they start talking when it's their turn. Whereas he kind of went in and just nervously started talking.
It's like you kind of get a feel for how the computers are supposed to.
Right. And so this in development, there's this like push and pull between, okay, I noticed players doing something. Do I add that to the NPCs, or do I make that a tell? Because players tend to do it and the NPCs don't. So like there's going to be this like kind of dialogue during beta. This is why I have to do, I mean, when you do Counter-Strike or a intense player skill competitive game, you have to have a really long-term beta, right? To balance it.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons I'm doing the beta this way. And so during beta, it's going to be interesting to see like what kind of ticks I add to the NPCs versus what I leave as things that the players only will do.
Yeah. So like, would you respond to that problem with saying like varying the amount of times that?
Well, they already do. I'm not even sure. So that's
do.
the thing. First thing I have to decide, is it a problem or not?
Right.
Like, I mean,
No, yeah,
no, because an elite spy would not do that. So as soon as Paul realized that was the mistake, like, oh, okay,
Right.
all right, and start varying that. And so like, the only requirement is that, Ian or Paul has to say how they're winning when they're winning, just so that we can like learn faster. But I mean, on the internet, I mean, eventually there'll be wikis and stuff like that. Hopefully, I mean, if the game's successful, like knock on wood, right? But they talk about like, okay, you need somewhere between a half a second and 2 seconds, before you start talking, or like when you pick up the statue, whatever. And I think that like, that kind of thing. I mean, you see that when you look at like, you can go on the Street Fighter wikis and it's just like, here's all this stuff. If you want to play at that level,
right.
you need to memorize all this stuff. Like there's at first you get this like, with games like that, like Counter-Strike or StarCraft or Street Fighter, highly competitive player skill games, you get this like arc of like, at first you come in and you're kind of having a good time, but you're getting killed a lot. And then you kind of get this natural feel and you're like doing better in that mid range. And then you get to this like, and then talent starts to make a difference, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm actually just kind of good at this game naturally and not at this other game. Oh, that's kind of cool. And then eventually you get to the like pro level, where it's just like, look, you got to study and you have to be talented, right? I mean, chess masters, both their brains work different than us and they memorize 5 million opening moves. Like
Right.
it's both of those are part of it. And so you want to make a game, if you want to make a really deep game, you have to support all of that. I don't want everyone to have to read the wiki to like, you shouldn't, there's gonna be tons of matchmaking and skill-based matchmaking and all that kind of stuff to make it so that you don't just get annihilated instantly by some like pro who likes to own noobs. But at the same time, if you want to play at that like highly ranked level, like you're gonna have to do that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to just imagine how that would play out, because it seems to me, just thinking about it, that the spy would always inherently have an advantage over, like at the very high level, over the sniper, because I don't know, the sniper has so much to look at, and the sniper is trying to find these tells. It's just like there's such a minuscule, at a very high level, there's such a minuscule difference that the spy can do between actions that...
Currently, the sniper has a slight advantage at the high level. As far as we're not actually sure yet, because here's what happened. Ian, who's the sniper player, the elite sniper tester, started beating Paul a lot. And we couldn't figure out why this was. And then we realized that Ian had helped out at PAX and had basically watched 30 hours of the game. And that's sniper practice. Like spy practice, you have to actually use the controller and practice, right? But for sniper, it's just a perceptual, observational thing. 99% of the game is just perceptual. You can do some stuff to like mess with the environment and stuff. And there'll be more of that. Like, you can start the music and people will start dancing, or you can, that kind of thing. But for the most part, it's just perceptual. And so he had so much more practice than Paul all of a sudden that we haven't been able to figure out yet, and we just need more testing, whether or not it's a little unbalanced towards the sniper at the elite levels, or it's just, hey, he's had that much more practice now because he watched so many more games.
How long?
I originally thought, the original fear was if it's too easy for the sniper, the whole game is screwed, right? Because it's hard to make it harder for the sniper in a fair way. You can like obfuscate stuff, but it turned out it was impossible for the sniper. So I've had to add stuff onto the spy. So that's actually good, because you can easily make the animations a little more visible, or the audio tells a little more clear, and things like that. That's a good tuning knob. If it was too easy all the time, no matter what for the sniper, then the game's dead in the water. So it's actually good if it's too hard for the sniper. Right now, it's a little unbalanced at the very high level the other way. So I'm gonna have to tune it. Well, first I'm gonna have to measure if that's actually true, or if it was just an advantage that Ian had. Then I have to tune it. But it's like, that's where, like, I mean, this is why it's going to be in beta for over a year.
How long are typical matches at this point?
The clock on the main map that people play. So it's different. There's different maps, first off, right? And different numbers of, and different game modes in each map, even for the 2-player mode. So there's like the mode you play, like if you just walked up at PAX and stood in line and decided to play for the first time, you'd play a map called the Ballroom, which has about, I think it has, it's like 12 or 15 people in it. There's 4 missions you have to do, and you get 3.5 minutes to do it. Now, that's actually not totally true, because you can actually, the spy can add time to the clock. But that is a tell as well, because the way you add time is you go up to the window and check your watch. And you can do it either the normal way the NPCs do, which doesn't do anything at the time, they're just checking their watch at the window, or you can do it in a way that adds time. It looks exactly the same, but the clock goes up on both machines.
So it's a huge tell.
Yes. So here's the thing. But there's now, there's a few different things to talk about there. There's also an active reload-esque, like from Gears of War. It's different because I actually talked to Cliff about like how I was going to change it, but like it's randomized. So active reload in Gears of War is a rhythm thing. You don't even look at it anymore once you've been playing Gears for a while because it's always the same measurements every time. Here I randomize both where the neutral zone and where the perfect zone is. So you actually have to watch it, and the thing speeds up as it goes. So the longer you have to look at it, the faster it's going. But that separates the tells into 3 different tells. There's if you screw up I call it an action test. If you screw up the action test, then you get a really obvious tell. Like you might, for the check watch one, it beeps when it adds the time. It usually beeps every minute, but if it beeps in the middle of a minute, somebody just screwed up an action test on adding time. The neutral is just adds time. The clock goes up by 30 seconds. And the perfect on the action test is it dilates time on the sniper's machine. So it actually slows the clock down on the sniper's machine. So you actually have to watch the clock and be like, that's not a second. Like one of that's like, fuck, somebody added time, right? So so there's various ways you have of doing it. So it is a huge tell, but there's so much for the sniper to be paying attention to that they often won't even notice. Sometimes like the worst games are where you look up you're the sniper and it's been, you're starting to look around and you look up the clock and it says 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And you're like, wait, the clock starts at 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So somebody added a minute's worth of time on there right at the beginning and just rushed it, right? And so so then next game, you're like looking for someone rushing the watch. But the other thing about the watch thing that turned out really well is that I originally was like, okay, I just need to add time for demoing because like, it's just annoying to run out of time when you're trying to show somebody how to play the game, right? And I was like, oh, well, I should, I'll just add a cheat key to add some time. And I was like, oh, wait, but that would actually be pretty useful. I could make that a tell. And then at the same time, in this parallel thread, there's this idea of how do you do taunts in this game where the whole point is not to know for them not to know who you are. So how do you taunt somebody? And it became like, oh, obviously the taunt has to happen after the fact. Like you taunt them and then they find out later that you taunted them.
Like you leave something.
Right. But so then we realized like, wow, you just added time. Like you added a minute onto the clock and they never noticed. It's like, and you're just looking right at them. Like you have to look out the window. So basically like sometimes, and so, so it became like simultaneously this taunt and this awesome gameplay thing where you're like, it integrates the gameplay of the perception versus performance thing with the metagame of like, I mean, the time limit makes no sense in the fiction of the guys, but it integrates that in there. So this is this really interesting thing that's working at multiple levels. So I want to find things like that for everything in the game.
That's just such a beautiful, subtle way to basically teabag somebody.
Yes, no, it's totally like, it's like, what did you, because at the end of the thing, it prints out like on the screen, it's like who they were, who you shot, and then there's a log of all the things that happened in the party, right? And so like at the beginning, and it calls out add times as pretty, bright in the thing. And it's like, oh man, I knew that was you, but I didn't see the clock go up or whatever, So you get a lot of discussion after the fact, which is why I have to add voice chat soon in the beta. I only have text chat, but like the voice is going to be really important.
So can sniper active reload or taunt in any way?
So no, but you have the laser sight, so you have some interactions in the room.
You could just like keep it trained on.
Oh yeah. So like and during one of we did a tournament. It turned out PAX. What year is this? This is 2012. So 2010 PAX was the first time I ever showed it publicly, and it went like amazingly well. It was Andy Schatz, who's doing Monaco, and I split a booth, and then we secretly had John's game, The Witness, there as well. But like for the most part, it was Andy. It was Monaco and Spy Party, and it was great. Like it was super crazy. I mean, I'd never been to PAX, and we had a booth, and it was still, and there were lines and everything. So we were like, people liked the game enough. So we were like, all right, we got to do a tournament towards the end. So on Sunday we did a tournament and had like, designed the tournament. The crazy thing about tournaments is once you have a tournament ladder, you have to have a point system. Like I have purposely not put points in the game yet because like any kind of like scoring, like really warps gameplay, right? It very much makes it so that like people start running the clock down, and that started happening as soon as we started assigning points to doing missions. Like people would run the clock down and like do all the stuff that you associate with sports, that kind of thing, which you want eventually, but you just want to make sure you don't do that so early that it warps the actual core game mechanic. But so at one time there's a guy got into the tournament. The way to get into the tournament was you had to have stood in line, had to actually played three times, meaning like six games at least. And we had a bunch of people stand in line. It was an hour-long line. We had a bunch of people stand in line 5 times, which is like a significant part of their PAX.
So that must have felt pretty good.
Yeah, it was awesome. So the next year, I actually redesigned the booth, so there were like 3 different stations, and you could do it. But anyway, we had one guy who, as the sniper, was just way better than the guy playing spy. It was like he came back in. He got eliminated early, but he was better. Like he just got an unlucky game. He got eliminated early, so we let him play the final game. We had an odd number of people, so one person had to play somebody twice, and we let him since he got eliminated, and we felt bad about it. He could play but the other guy just was not as good. And so on the sniper side, you can highlight and low light people, like basically make them brighter or make them darker. And it doesn't feed back into the gameplay at all, except for it makes it so that you can manage your suspects better. Okay, so like, the sniper doesn't know, but you have to aim the laser sight at them to click them, right? And so you can kind of see them moving around. And the guy, by like a minute in, he had everyone in the party low lighted except for one guy. And so like the audience is going wild. Like it was great, like playing to the audience. It's just like the guys walking around, and the audience is like, "Do him now! No, wait!"
So, like, one of my favorite things about the way Assassin's Creed does it is sort of the payoff. Like you're working towards this moment where you finally get this, like violent assassination at the end.
Right, the assassination animations are beautifully done.
Right, and so I'm kind of is there some kind of like moment of payoff where there's like just this incredible release?
Yeah, well, because there's only one bullet in the game. Like
It's a good sound.
There is no, yeah, it is.
It's the sound, right?
Well, there's the sniper sound, right? That sound, but then also everyone in the party screams, except for there's also this one high pitched woman scream, which didn't used to be in there. And then I was playing with Will, right? He was a friend from Spore and everything, and like he's like, you got to add a woman scream in there. I'm like, oh, that's so cliche, but it like totally sells it.
One deviant motherfucker that will
exactly. But so the payoff is the shot releases all the tension on both people. Even if you get shot, you're just like, oh, finally. And so
release.
Yeah, so like so it's interesting when you think about it because there's no actual violence in the game. It's a very filmic use of violence in the sense that it's just, to talk about Hitchcock again, there's no violence in the game. The game is over by the time the violence happens, right? Like you click the button and then the game's, like the guy falls down, but there's no interactivity anymore. And it's the threat of violence the entire time that makes it more powerful, and it's so much better than mowing people down in terms of the tension of the single bullet is so much better than a clip, basically, for tension. It's not the same as when you're mowing dudes down, like you get a certain power fantasy aspect to it, so it's a very different feeling from that. But that tension, that threat of violence, is just so much more powerful, and that's the whole Hitchcock thing of like, don't show the murder, right? It's just so much scarier when you don't.
It's interesting to juxtapose that with something like Modern Warfare 3, where it's just like so much is going on all the time, and yet somehow, even though it's so much less going on, it's probably equally as intense.
Well, and in fact, I had never seen the movie Babe, which I'd been meaning to see for a
pig
movie.
Okay,
right? Okay, so like
movie.
it's a great movie, and I just never seen it. And so I was flying to I was on like an international flight to Japan, and I was like, oh, Babe is on their little the console thing. Great, I'll finally watch Babe. And I took notes on Babe for Spy Party because Babe's use of silence is amazing. I don't know if you remember. I don't know how long it's been since you guys have seen it, but like there's a scene where there's like 2 or 3 scenes that do this. There's the famous scene at the end where he's walking and he's doing the whole thing. But before that, there's a scene in the barnyard area where there's no music playing, there's no Foley, it's just like the tiniest, and it's like so like you're so immersed and so tense and so like just part of the scene because it just all fades away. And so I think I'm gonna do, you heard it here first, I haven't done this yet, but I think I'm gonna duck, it's called ducking in audio when you damp the sound. I'm gonna duck the sound when you zoom as the sniper or when you go into the sniper mode. So normally you're just looking through binoculars, right? And then and when you go into actual sniper mode, I think I'm going to duck all the audio. Like the crowd wall is going to go away. Any music's going to go away.
So it's like holding your breath or something?
Yeah. It's just going to be, because it worked so well in these scenes in Babe. I was just like, oh man, that is so beautiful. You try and take inspiration from anywhere, right? Like, that's the whole, like, especially in indie games where you're trying to do something different and kind of innovative and experimental and like, I hesitate to say it, but arty. Like, my game's about human behavior, right? And so I'm not going to get a lot of inspiration from playing a lot of, I get a ton of inspiration from games like Counter-Strike on the player skill, like depth side of things. But from a humanity standpoint, doing a game about human behavior, like, you've got to look other places. You sit in a cafe and watch people, And so Babe, it was just like, there's just these things in really nice pieces of art, whether it's film or literature or music or any of, theater or whatever. And you just try and take those pieces away, like they did this, the sound, and it was just amazing.
Is it this kind of thing that has you working on an indie game like this as opposed to another game like Spore, like that?
Yeah, well, also I got laid off, but
aside from that,
I got laid off because I told them I wasn't going to work on another game because of this.
Okay,
right? I basically was like, I was working on stuff after Spore shipped, and like I was proud of the stuff I did and that we did on Spore. Like, I mean, most of the stuff I did was in the creature editor, like I was saying. It was like the creature skin and the paint system and the animation to be able to, and it's like a really challenging, interesting problem to try and animate a creature that you haven't actually seen.
Yeah, I mean, I've read some of your, I looked at some of your research papers that you wrote.
And so we got a
this.
SIGGRAPH paper out of it, like super hardcore math, and it was beautiful. I love solving that kind of problem, but from a gameplay standpoint, to me, Spore was very disappointing. Like, and the thing that I think we missed, which I think
Kevin reviewed this game.
I did actually, and I would love to talk about Spore endlessly. I really liked Spore.
Yeah, I mean that's cool. Like, a lot of people like Spore. I loved parts of Spore, but like the game as a whole, like the gameplay was just not compelling.
Well, I've always been kind of curious about this. I'm not trying to hijack your conversation, Tom, at all. Like just like Spore is.
This is why it's a podcast.
An incredibly intriguing game to me for many reasons, but I've always been kind of curious, like, how do you get to this point where there's this built expectation over what people think a game is supposed to be versus what a game actually is?
Oh, it's a huge problem.
And at what point did you realize that there was just no way that the product you were going to deliver was going to equal what people had created in their heads?
Okay, there's like 5 different things we could talk about based on what you said. one of the things that I actually people talk about with respect to spy parties, we'll talk about that one, and we can go back to the Spore thing, which is just like, can you overhype a game? And I actually don't think you can overhype a game. I think you can underdeliver on the hype, but I don't think you can overhype. I don't think the Spore hype was too much hype and was, I mean, and I have arguments with this about people who were on the game and whatever, and that's fine. I say you can, I mean, I could be totally wrong, but my gut instinct on this is that the problem with Spore was not that it was overhyped, is that it underdelivered. Like the game, like, and my evidence for this was, if you look at when we shipped it, remember we shipped the creature editor first?
Oh yeah.
And we weren't sure what the reaction to that was going to be. We knew it was cool.
You
but
basically gave it away for free, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think they ended up selling it for $10.
It was $10.
Initially, it was free, I think.
Yeah, but there was like a store version that was like upgraded.
More parts and stuff like that. But anyway, but basically, we shipped the creature editor for free as a kind of a little bit of a beta for some of the technology and just make sure everything, we got telemetry on it.
You delivered the best part of the game.
Well, right. So, but ignoring that for a second, we didn't know what gamers were going to think about it. In fact, we thought they were going to just totally ignore it, right? Like, I mean, it's like, you can make a little cool creature and it can dance around. But we went into Something Awful forums and they went ape shit for the thing. Yeah. And at that point, we knew we had something that could appeal to almost everybody. Because, I mean, they started calling it Sporn, obviously. Yeah. But, like, I mean, they had...
Which was delightful.
Yeah, so it was totally delightful. I mean, we had to, like, we had to delete them off the main Sporepedia, but we loved it when they
kept an archive.
Yeah, I mean, it's some awesome... But even ignoring the Sporn, they had some of the most creative creatures because they were actual gamers who were used to interacting with, a system. I mean, what is a game except for interacting with a system? And so they were used to like figuring out the boundaries of the system, and so they made this crazy stuff that we had no idea was possible to make in there. And some of it we had to fix bugs. I mean, we kept directories full of creatures that broke it so that we could fix them for when we shipped and stuff like that. So it was awesome from so many different levels. But so that to me said that the core part of the game, which is this build your thing and then do something with it, could have appealed to everybody. And the problem was we couldn't cash that check in the actual games themselves. So you could make that creature, but you couldn't do anything. And I think for me, boiling any really, I was on Spore for 6 years and I was not the longest person on the game. Mm-hmm. Like I was not on the game the longest. So like 6 years is insane for a game. I would have slipped it and worked on it even longer to make it it could have been the Sistine Chapel of video games. Let's be clear. Like, I mean, the amount of like attention that it deserved, the amount of brain power we had on the game, like just all of these things, like it was a huge missed opportunity. There were still, I think, to your positive review point, there's still more magic in Spore than in most games you ship. Like, there's huge flaws that were like not living up to what my high expectations for the game, but in terms of like magical moments in the game, like there were more in that game than almost any other game. Mm-hmm. And that's a testament to like how much awesome stuff was in there. But so I don't think you could actually overhype. I don't think we were overhyped. I just think that we didn't deliver on what we called editor consequence internally. We had discussions about this. We just weren't sure and I think partly because we were too focused on accessibility. But editor consequence means the thing you make in the editor matters to the game. And you can feel it when you play the game. It doesn't that much. Like, it does a little bit, and you get more parts that have extra bonuses or something. But it's not like I can't reach that fruit because I made a guy with too short of arms, and now he's going to starve to death unless I find some bushes with lower fruit. So now I got to move, but he doesn't move very fast, so I better put longer legs. That's the kind of thing that I think there could have been an incredible game built around.
I mean, is that bad game design that you couldn't get everything you wanted in 6 years later?
I mean, okay, so the game that shipped was in many ways bad game design. right? Like, in other words, there were great parts of it. There were moments of brilliance. There were some amazing technology, some amazing user interface. But yeah, the design of that game, I think, was unsatisfying, at least to me. That said, like, it's really hard to express how hard it is to someone who's not, like, that everything was new about that game. Like, you're supposed to innovate on like one front, right? Like, you're gonna, like, you've got a base and then you step out and take a risk. Most games don't innovate. A lot of games sadly don't innovate on any fronts, and that's a shame, right? But like, games that are considered very innovative games, like you take something like Eco or something like that. Like, there was basically one or maybe two things that game did differently than another 3D puzzle platformer, right? The interaction with the princess, right? And maybe some of the lighting effects and stuff like that. Some of the, like, especially on PlayStation from a graphics standpoint, right? And so, like, innovate in that one way, right? Spore, I mean, it innovated in every single direction almost. I mean, yes, it used a 3D graphics card, but like, like, there's so many things. So we basically, like, we're falling all over ourselves with just risk. Like, risk management is a huge part of shipping a giant, $50 million game. And it's just very hard to get anything going, let alone to actually be superlative with that many balls in the air, basically. I think that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it needed 12 years for that amount of risk. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe we should have just shipped the creature game, meaning everything doubled down on. We got the creature editor really nice, just ship the creature game, and then learn from that, and then ship one with the building editor and the vehicle editor and the planet editor and all these. I mean, like,
there probably wasn't enough confidence to say, this is going to sell, even though apparently people,
yeah, I mean, it's just
in retrospect, people dug it.
Totally, but also, like, I mean, one of the visions of the game is this Eames Power of 10 video, right? Where it's just like you are zooming all the way out. And so if you just ship the creature game, that is in some sense like not living up to what you've been telling people. Like, part of the reason, like, some people, it's interesting to read what people were disappointed with in the game, because a lot of people were like, I didn't care about any of that planetary stuff. I just really wanted to play the space game. Whereas for me, it was all about the creature game. And so, like, that game was trying to be all things to all people in some sense. So, so yeah, so I don't know if it was a time thing or just the team makeup thing or the number of risk management or probably all of those things. I mean, a lot of people were burned by the time. I mean, 6 years is a long time to work on something.
Yeah, I've been looking at the FAQ you have on your website. I don't know what that was. But it looks like you have, like, lots of big plans still on the table. So is Spy Party going to end up being a 6-year
Well, so here's the thing. So I'm a perfectionist, which is a good and a bad thing, right? But
a bad thing if you ever want to do anything with your life.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
not with your life. In general.
Here's the new thing, because, like, the new paid beta, like Minecraft style, Minecraft and Frozen Synapse.
I wanted to get to this too.
Yeah, so that allows me to ship something that everybody can play, but without triggering my perfectionism genes, because of course I'm still working on it. Right? And so, like, I can ship the paid beta, and I can actually, like, get some revenues for the game, so I can eat, for example.
Eating's cool.
Yes. Send my daughter to school, and but at the same time, since I know I'm working on it, the perfectionism alarm bells don't go off. Because, like, no, I would never ship what I've got right now.
Right.
But shipping a paid beta, I mean, I'm still having trouble shipping the paid beta because I'm still a perfectionist, but the level of perfectionism triggering is way lower. Because I know that I can, and because I know people are enthusiastic to play it, and because I've sold it to them as a beta that will be updated, it doesn't have to be perfect. If they're not expecting to be perfect, I'm not expecting to be perfect. It'll work.
And that should actually probably help you keep working on the game, because you're just like, oh my god, these people have already played. I got to deliver something.
I mean, the truth of the matter is, the reason I'm working on the game is because I'm driven to work on the game, right? And so it actually, like, I'm hoping that isn't in the mix, because there's the good kind of motivation and the bad kind of motivation, right? You don't want that, like, scared or threatened kind of motivation if you're trying to do something creative, right? Not wanting to disappoint myself and others is a reasonable part of the mix. I mean, I know for a fact that I'm going to be a way harsher critic of the game than any fan, because I, like, will beat myself up to the end of the earth. So that perfectionism thing. So but it's really motivating to have people in and having a good time. Like, PAX is exhausting, but it's really amazing to see people playing the game and having a great time. So I'm really looking forward to, like, the tuning stuff. Like, I mean, again, I want to take it from, like I said, it's not running out of steam at the 12 or 15 hours yet, but it's like, it'll be interesting to see 12 or 15 hours having friends playtest is a lot of commitment on their part. 12 or 15 hours of a game that's in paid beta is like, boom, that'll be done in a week. There'll be somebody who's played 20 hours in a week. So I'll really quickly be able to figure out whether or not the game is still balanced at that level. And then what am I going to have to do to take it from 12 or 15 hours to 300 hours to get that Counter-Strike level, depth. I'm super looking forward to that, because that's the kind of game I like. Like, I think interactivity. So, I mean, this is a multi-stage rant that we don't have to go all into, but like, I think that if we do it right, if we don't screw it up, games have the potential to be the kind of preeminent art form of the 21st century, kind of the way film was to the 20th century in terms of like, most sociological, cultural, like, weight and impact.
I wanted to ask you about, I've got like so many questions.
Sorry,
And we're
I talk
totally
really fast. We'll squeeze it all in. But so, and when you're talking about the thing that differentiates games from other art forms is interactivity. And to me, there's a lot of different aspects of interactivity. To me, the most beautiful part of interactivity is that player skill, like creating this system that people interact in. And it doesn't have to be competitive, it can be cooperative or whatever, but that whole thing of like where I'm getting better. So that game designers tend to differentiate games into two kinds. Like there's player skill games and there's avatar skill games. Like an avatar skill game is a game like Skyrim, where like the game you're playing at 30 hours is not that much different than the game you're playing at 1 hour. Your dude's way buffer and things like that, but like the interactions you're having are not that much. If you gave someone who's played it for an hour a level 40 character or 30 character or whatever, they could play. Right? I mean, like, so they wouldn't know which spells to use in which case and stuff like that. But, it's pretty much the skill is in the avatar. Whereas if you gave someone who's played Counter-Strike for an hour and you put them up against someone who's played Counter-Strike for 300 hours, like, I mean, it's not, they would have no frags, right? Like, it's just not, it wouldn't work. So that's the stuff that interests me. And in fact, like the games that I think are the most beautiful games in the world, I mean, some of which I've already mentioned, Counter-Strike and that sort of thing. But Go, the Japanese board game,
right? That's like 10,000 years old or something.
Yeah. And it's and poker, like Texas
Also
Hold'em poker. Yes, exactly. It makes people look like they're 10,000 years old after they played too much of it. But those games, the like level of the level of player skill, the level of depth. Like I played a bunch of Go, and I still suck completely. But I got enough. It's like, I played enough Go to like crawl up to the edge of the precipice and kind of peek over, right? And you can just
peek
see
over to know how deep that hole
and it just
goes.
kee's going. Yeah. It's just foggy down there, and you can never see the bottom of it. And so games like that's what really interests me about games. That I feel like the for me, at least, for my part of the art form, like that's the artiest part. That's the most amazing, deepest, like meaningful truths of the universe part of interactivity. So that's what I want to explore with Spy Party.
I want to get back to, you were talking about, you briefly touched on movies. You've said in the past that we're around 1905.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
I mean, I don't know if you know much about film history, but I studied a little bit of film history up through, the teens or whatever, just because I was really curious how. So film and comics are really interesting because they're the two art forms that happened during modern written history. I mean, basically they both started about the same time, 1895-ish, and then we got to see exactly what happened over the last century. Right. Whereas music, I mean, we've been beating bongos for like how long? Like, it's 10,000 years is the universal time limit. It's really fucking old. It's about 10,000 years.
They started throwing Go chips together and we're like, hey, that's pretty cool.
And similarly with painting, I mean, it's been around for 10,000 years. Right. It's been, literature, 10,000 years. Whereas film and comics are very modern, and so you can really see, and theater's been around forever as well. So like, you can really see what happened there, and it's kind of terrifying because film made it and comics didn't. I mean, I love comics and everything, and like,
thank God Brendan's not here.
Yeah, but I mean,
he's...
the truth of the matter is, even having something like Mouse or Chris Ware couldn't save comics out of the ghetto. They were in a cultural ghetto, like. And a lot of people, it's interesting because a lot of people will say like, look at all the summer movies that are based on comic books. Like the film industry will rape anyone. They don't care. They will take any. I mean, they're making a movie out of Battleship, the board game right now. That does not mean we've arrived as a
but
form.
It looks awful.
Yes,
it's like
the only question.
Aliens involved.
So here's the question about to the panel. Is Liam Neeson going to say, "You sunk my battleship"?
He better.
I mean, he has to, right? Like, how do you?
He's got the accent for it.
Well, and he's dead. I mean, apparently he dies in like the first 20 minutes of the movie. Right? So like, they better get it out of him soon. Yeah. I mean, if he doesn't say that, it's like, I mean, I'm not going to go see the movie anyway. But like, that's a huge missed opportunity.
Total anticlimax.
But so film and comics. So comics didn't make it, at least. I mean, there's amazing work in comics. I mean, like, Mouse is Pulitzer Prize winning, right? Like, if anything could pull you out of a cultural ghetto, it would be a freaking Pulitzer Prize, and it didn't happen. Right. And so you can see how they evolved because of written history. And so film started out, 1895, Lumiere brothers, all that kind of thing. But by 1905, they were doing movies in bijous that you could pay and go see. And the truth of the matter is, it was ghettoized. It was like only poor people went to go see movies. Like the upper middle class went to theater. Failed theater directors who were working in movies and whatever. And it's funny because you look at I picked 1905 just kind of randomly in this kind of area, but then I went and looked on Wikipedia which movies they made in 1905, which are the big movies, and it's so perfect for making the analogy to games. I read you the two big movies of that year were. The Great Train Robbery remade with kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great Train Robbery 2.
Yes, remade with this time with kids, and then a movie called something like A Gentleman Loses His Pants on the Gansevoort Beach.
It's like a French gentleman.
Which is a French. It's like it's in like Holland or something, and it's showing him, and the waves come up, and his pants get washed away, and then he runs around in his underwear, and the cops chase him. Slapstick stupidity, like
Making
boom,
lewd gestures,
yeah.
I'm sure.
And I kind of feel like that's the kind of games we're sort of making right now.
Yeah.
So the little train robbery.
The little train robbery
and the misadventure of a French gentleman without pants at the Zandvoort Beach.
Thank you.
So
I love Wikipedia.
in that sense, are we at this point where games will either go the route of movies or go the route of
I
comic
think
books?
so, and I don't know how to like. I mean, that's so analogies always break down, right? So who knows what the actual truth of the matter is? And interactivity is just simply harder than linear media. Like it just is. I think if there was some way to measure hardness in terms of like some universal constant, I think interactivity is harder.
Though?
I don't know.
Because when they were making it, I'm sure they felt it, like it took a really long time for them to get movies to where they're at now.
But look at what they had to work with. They had literature, they had like theater, they had. I mean, the first films they didn't realize they could move the camera or film the thing out of sequence or all these different things that like the whole thing where you cut someone. When you do a conversation, you make sure you cut them from both sides so they look like they're looking at each other as opposed to both looking the same way. All of these things that you could just go to NYU Film School and just learn in 2 or 3 years. They didn't know. They had to discover all that, but they had. I mean, the very first films, like they set up a camera and they just put play on, right? And like, there are movies that are shot that way nowadays that aren't terrible movies. It's a very different art film, like the art form. There's no like film and theater. I definitely diverge completely. I mean, you show someone from 1900 Memento, and they have no idea what's going on, right? But at the same time, they could at least build on that stuff, right? The idea that you could film a movie out of sequence and then edit it. Someone was like, "Holy cow," But like, that to me, it seems like an incredibly important part of film, but not completely different from. So the only things that are like interactivity are things like improv theater, where like the audience is actually kind of interacting a little bit with the thing, and you got to make stuff up on the fly. But that's so removed from having the computer do it. The human brain is so powerful. That I mean, I think the interactivity. I mean, games. Some people make the argument games have been around for thousands of years, 10,000 years as well, right? But I think there's a qualitative difference when the computer is simulating things. Like it's kind of like that Stalinistic thing, like quantity has a quality all its own. Like the amount, you're sitting there playing Settlers of Catan, and like you're evaluating 1 or 2 rules a second, right? And like the computer can do 4 billion, and it just things change. And so, so I just think we just need more time and more practice. But
I want to know.
But we also have to try. That's the biggest thing I want to say. I think the difference between the ghetto and not the ghetto is us trying to push things in the right direction.
Yeah.
And it's just really it's hard because we make so much money. Like the film industry didn't make any money when they were figuring this stuff out. And the money is such a terrible pressure in some ways.
Right.
I mean, I think it's great like that especially like the kind of like what I call the golden age of indie is happening right now. Like you can actually like, I could make a game like Spy Party and be somewhat confident that if I make a high quality game, I'll be able to, help my, continue paying my daughter's tuition in Oakland.
Right.
But like, and that didn't used to be the case, and that's awesome. So money is great, but
so do you think Birth of the Nation is going to come out of the indie scene as opposed to
I don't know. I mean, Birth of the Nation
who's
was
the racist here?
Right.
Who's going to do that?
Exactly. But I mean, Birth of a Nation is, nobody, if you read film history, like D.W. Griffith didn't invent any of those things. He just put them all together in one thing, right? So someone figured out how to do parallel action sequences. Somebody figured out how to edit out of sequence. Someone figured out how to do the close-up, blah, 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 move the camera, dollies, all of the stuff. And he just was smart enough to like put it all together and make a big story.
Do we have all the pieces yet?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know that, right? But I don't think so. I don't think like that's the thing. I don't think we have anywhere near all the pieces of the grammar yet. We just haven't. I mean, I don't think we've pushed far enough into what so a bunch of people think that different things are important about games, and that's great. You want an art form to be pushed in multiple directions, just like you want music to, you don't want just one kind of music. But at the same time, I think that this like kind of emotionally compelling aspect of games, and there's a lot of ways that can be. Like a lot of people think that has to be story. Like Spy Party doesn't really have a story. It's emotionally compelling because of this, to the extent that it is, because it's about human behavior and this kind of tension and perception and performance thing. There's a lot of different ways, but I think that's the key. It's emotionally compelling, and we have to have a wide definition of emotionally compelling. A lot of times right now it's adolescent power fantasies where like we trade in that and frustration, and like it's just a very limited, like we do those really well, like
no,
but we don't really try for other things. And it's not clear what other emotions and those kinds of things are interactivity compatible, but we have to find out. We have to push the boundaries, and I think part of the problem is, again, that money thing where you've got to make your $100 million back, and like to do that, you got to be conservative, and the way you do that is put a bunch of military stuff in your game and like make it really like and really trade in this adolescent power fantasy, and like off you go, and and
thus illuminates the cliche. Paralyzed by success, or
exactly, totally, and I think that like, I mean, if I can wave a magic wand and like cut the game industry in revenues by 10x, 1/10, I don't know, I'd think hard about doing it. That might help. I don't know. We
totally.
We could keep going forever. I'll talk until you interrupt me. So basically, go
funnel this down. Let's get to your early access beta. Basically, people pay $15 to beta test the game. So it's like at some point you'll give them, once it's done, a free copy.
Right. So the idea was I needed to have a really long-term beta, right? Because it's player skill, competitive players, multiplayer player skill, competitive ladder rank, blah 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 game, right? So you just have to balance the hell out of those games. So I knew I was gonna have to have an open beta anyway. I was at the same time starting to look for investment because I'm going to need to hire people, like not a lot of people, but like, my artwork is not going to get the game over the finish line.
Right. Charming as it is.
Yes. The number of people who have, it's like, I love the current artwork. You should make it switchable like the Monkey Island XBLA game. I'm like, you know how much work that is to keep that artwork up to date?
Here, this is how you do it. Get the work.
Yeah. But, that would be hilarious, but probably not going to happen.
Just leave it to the modder community.
But so, like, I started to look for investment, and like investment, like even with things like indie fund, like investment's expensive, right? Like if someone gives you money, they want a big chunk of your stuff.
Right.
And there's, indie fund is great, for example, from a compared to publisher money, but it's still like it's costing you money to take their money. And so I was like. And then Minecraft, in the middle of this, like Minecraft had already happened, and I talked to Marcus a little bit about like how that had worked. And then right in the middle of this, like PAX East 2011 happened. When I was thinking about it, I was talking to people. The IGF had happened at GDC that year, so I was a finalist in the grand prize for the IGF, losing to Minecraft as deserved. But right after that, we went straight from GDC to PAX East, and I set up, and I was in the Firehose Games booth. They were super cool. They loaned me like a tiny little sliver of their booth, and so I set up in there, and there was a line of people playing and everything, and which is great. And the difference between that and PAX, which was 6 months before that, PAX West, the previous year. Everyone who played at PAX West was like, "Oh, cool, when's it coming out? Oh, bummer." I had like 2 years. Oh, bummer. And then they'd go away or whatever. And like I was, sign up for the mailing list, whatever.
Right.
But at PAX East, they were like, "Can I buy it now?" And I attribute that change to everyone who got up, and I attribute that change to Minecraft, like the idea of paying for early access to support someone.
Yeah, that is.
And so it came right in the middle of me considering how I was going to hire these people, looking around for investment. Like I've got a bunch of money saved up myself, but not enough to really take the game over the finish line with employees or things like that. That takes, once you've got a burn rate like that, it's really expensive. And so I was like, oh man, and then this happened, and everyone who got up, can I just pay for it now? Can I just pay for it now? Can I just pay for it now? And it happened enough times that it wasn't a fluke. It was like, okay, something has shifted.
You're just like, yes, yes you can.
I'm going to look into that actually. And so, but something shifted in that 6 months, and I credit it to Minecraft. A bunch of other people who have been doing that, like Overgrowth, the Wolfire guys have been doing this kind of pre-order alpha thing, and Frozen Synapse and a bunch of other people. But I think that kind of plate shifting that happened where people were all of a sudden not only begrudgingly willing to pay for early access, but actually like encouraging me to let them give me money, was great. And all of a sudden I was like, all right, let me look into this. So I spent a month like looking at all the server stuff I'd have to do and like how the billing's going to work, and talk to Marcus about, does he think it's compatible with this and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, okay, I think this is going to work. I mean, it's not going to work for every game. Like John couldn't do it for The Witness. Like it's a single player puzzle game. It would just like ruin the game. Right. And it's like, but for Spy Party, where the entire game is in the players, like, performance with each other, and that balancing period and everything, like it I think, knock on wood, will work really well.
I mean, it's so weird though, because like I used to play MMOs a lot back in the day, and like if you look at something like EverQuest or World of Warcraft or whatever you have, like everybody agreed, okay, the first couple months are the developers are still beta testing. I can't believe they...
No, we paid to beta test this game. It used to be an insult.
It used to be an insult, but now it's almost like a badge of honor.
There's $15 and $60. That's not insignificant.
Okay.
Right.
I also think it comes down to people are so desperate for anything new that they would rather pay for something that's not finished and spend time with that than just plunk down for the same old experience.
Right. And they also want to support innovative experimental arty development too. That's been a huge thing. In fact, there's 2 price points. I picked $15 because that's kind of the XBLA price point, the PSN price point. And much like when CDs finally there used to be these things called CDs that you could buy that had music on them.
10,000 years ago.
10,000 years ago. When they stabilized in price around $9.99 or whatever, like you kind of knew what you were getting, right? And so games, I think that maybe I could get more for Spy Party, maybe it's worth less, I don't even know. But $15, you kind of know you're getting what I call a AAA indie game, right? It's a Braid, it's Castle Crashers, it's that kind of size of experience and polish and what it's trying to do, right? And Limbo, there's a whole bunch of them now, right? And so I realized it's better to hit, and you remember when Braid came out and XBLA priced it at $15, there was that penny Right, there was that Penny Arcade comic where he's comparing it to an ironic T-shirt, and he's like, "What? You won't pay for this awesome, beautiful game?"
It's so weird in hindsight that people thought it was overpriced.
Yes, but so now it's kind of become that AAA indie price point, and so it seems better to just go with that, so people know what to expect around that size, than try and go I think it's worth $19.95 or $17.98 or whatever. So it's there's a $15, but then a lot of people were like, "I want to give you more money than $15." I'm like, I will try and make that happen.
But okay.
Well, so that's the thing. That's where it's a difference between they want to buy a game and they want to support development of innovation.
Yep.
And so I made a second price point, which is there's a pay what you want above $50, like $50 or above, and what I decided to do there was, this is if you want to support. There's going to be no, I don't know if you've read my articles, this whole extrinsic motivation and rewards and badges and stuff. I think are all of those things. There's a lot of psychology that says that stuff is bad for games. So there's not going to be any marker in the game.
That was the gamification rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, that's related to it, but there's also just even Xbox Live achievements and things like that. I'm worried about, and there's a paper on my website about, or a lecture on my website about it. But anyway, there's not going to be any badges or anything in the game that showed that you paid $50 or more. It's just, you're playing the game like everybody else. If you want to support development, do it. But what I am going to do is I'm going to, people who do the $50 kind of, more support thing, I'm going to put their name in the credits of the game when it finally ships.
That's pretty cool.
And then, so I got this idea from this board game designer, Dan Verson, who basically for pre-orders, board games cost money to make because you got to print the thing up, right? So you have to have a certain number of orders before you can even shoot all the film and do all the thing and cut all the cardboard and do all this. And so he takes pre-orders and then he prints the names. And in his case, because it's not digital distribution, video games huge, there's basically a couple hundred people's names on the inside of the box. It's on the thing that folds up on the back, there's the back of the box and the thing that folds up to make it into a box, on the edges on the inside are thanks for the support of these people. I was like, that is an awesome idea. It's just such a great way that doesn't have anything with the crappy, extrinsic motivation thing of badges or I'm a gold member, blah, blah, blah. I'm cooler than you are. It's totally outside of the game. It's all, but it's a way to say thanks to people for supporting it. And I realized I was like, man, how, if a million people sign up for that, how am I going to put a million names in there? I'll have $50 million. I can hire 20 people to solve this problem. This is a problem worth having. But no.
First world problem, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think 100, I don't think a million people are going to sign up for that, but anybody who does, that's great because it helps support the game a lot. So, and then eventually there'll be, once I figure out how to do the backend and stuff, there'll be the way Frozen Synapse worked was you paid 26 or whatever it was, and you got 2 copies. Because it's a 2-player game, they gave away 2 copies at a time, and you pay a little more. And so I'll probably do stuff like that, invite a friend, all kinds of stuff like that. Right now, it's just, so basically when I announced that, I have, as of yesterday, I think it was 10,700 people are signed up. To pay me $15, hopefully. They haven't paid yet.
Yeah, the beta is not out yet?
No, I realized that I couldn't scale the beta. I didn't know how to write the server code to be scalable for opening it up immediately. So what I did was I wrote the mailing list server to be scalable and just took people's names. And I said, please don't sign up if you're not going to pay because I need to be able to predict. I need to be able to invite 100 people and get 98 of them to sign up, not invite 1,000 people and 20 of them sign up. So I in big red lettering, just don't sign up. There'll be an open period later where you can check it out or whatever. But for now, if you want to sign up, please be willing to accept the email when your invite comes. And so I thought I'd be sending, I'm terrible at estimating time. I thought I'd be sending out the invites during the summer, but it's still not out. But any day now,
Any day now.
Yeah, we're really close.
Okay, so it's on it will be on PC first, and then you hope to bring it to other platforms.
It's a Windows app right now. And then when I ship, I mean, I hope to port it to Mac and whatnot during the beta, just because it's good to get cross-platform stuff going when you're in beta, so you can test it out. When I ship, I hope to ship on all the major, XBLA, PSN, Steam, all of those things. So whether or not all those will exist in the 6 years when I ship, no. Hopefully I'll ship it in like 10,000 years from now. Okay. I don't know the digital, but I mean, people, when I first said like, oh, I think this game's going to take 3 more years, they're like, oh my God, the console transition's coming. You can't do that. You got to like, and I'm like,
you've been talking to Microsoft and Sony. You know what's going on.
That's
right?
like the weather. Like you just can't predict that stuff. So like the only knob I have control over is the quality of the game. So all I have to, I'm going to focus as much as I can on making an awesome game, and then just whatever the landscape looks like, then I'm hoping it'll be compatible. I hope the AAA, I hope the kind of golden age of indie is not over by then, and I've totally screwed myself. But I'd rather have an awesome game that doesn't sell any copies than sell some copies of a game I wasn't proud of. So
all right, so that is Spy Party. We have more of the hotspot to get to. You should stay because so moving on. 10 years ago this week in reviews, this is a segment we do where I read a score and a review and you try to guess the game. So we're going to go to that. 9.0 is the score.
Oh gosh, a high
10
one.
10 years ago this week. This game is superb. However, if the realistic setting has led you to expect a serious combat simulation along the lines of Ghost Recon or Operation Flashpoint, you're going to be surprised and perhaps disappointed. This game is first and foremost a run-and-gun shooter, a really, really excellent run-and-gun shooter. A lot of clever scripting and precisely orchestrated mayhem lend it a sustained intensity that more open-ended tactical shooters often lack. Relatively short, but very dense, it's like one half game and one half amusement park ride.
Call of Duty 1.
Sort of. Not quite.
Medal of Honor? Allied Assault.
Allied Assault. So it was just interesting reading this review from 10 years ago when we were still excited about the cinematic shooter that is Call of Duty.
Wait. You're saying we're not anymore?
I'm saying...
People still gush over stuff like Call of Duty, which is just like a...
I'm saying...
walk through hostile territory and shoot
kind of become
dumb
in
AI.
vogue to hate on the Call of Duty.
It's very
still-
in vogue to hate on Call of Duty.
Cinematic shooters still get very high scores and still clog up the MPDs every month.
well, not to mention sell $600 million worth of copies on the first day.
Yeah.
That is your go-to formula. I have another one. I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to tell you the concept. It was a 7.3. The game is called Darkened Sky, published by Simon & Schuster.
Darkened Sky is fantastic. That's the Skittles game.
It's the Skittles
That is
game.
Yeah.
What is Darkened Sky?
we should
For those
have
of us who
done-
don't play 100 games a week,
I will
what is
read
Darkened
it.
Sky?
Though
We
you
should
wouldn't know
have
it
done
from...
the guess thing.
Sorry.
I could have totally guessed that one because I love
sorry.
Darkened Sky.
Though you wouldn't know it from glancing at its box, Darkened Sky is, of all things, a tie-in for a recent Skittles candy marketing
What?
campaign. Instead of having to, quote-unquote, taste the rainbow, you'll need to put it back together in this third-person action-adventure game.
Oh wait, you were saying Skittles.
Yeah,
I heard
yeah,
you say
totally.
skills.
Oh, no,
I like
no,
a
no, no,
skill-based
no, no,
game that was.
That's a skills game.
Skills.
There was nothing like that at the time. No games needed
But it was
skill back then.
apparently quite entertaining, and people enjoyed it
That
a
game
lot.
was
So
super
dark.
fun.
Why was the sky dark?
Because there's no more rainbow.
That's right.
Rainbow
You
gives
put the
Sky
rainbow
dark.
back together. Plus, it was one of those games. It had a female protagonist,
Right,
Which
okay.
is
Was she a
all
Skittle?
too rare.
No.
She was a leprechaun, actually.
She was something else. But you had your magic was all based on Skittles. But the game didn't hammer it. It didn't play like it was a
wasn't like
marketing
an
thing. It actually
arcane,
played like a
old
good
style.
It wasn't
game.
like the Doritos Crunch
Or the,
game.
what was
was
that?
the car?
Burger King?
Oh my God, sneaking.
The people
Yeah,
love
the-
Sneak King though, didn't they? I thought people
This
liked
is
Sneak King.
creepy.
That's its charm. I don't know. Pop quiz hotspot. I have retired the segment. Not enough people wanted a free game.
I think you should replace the segment with a dramatic reading from the book.
Okay, no, I will get to that. So I have killed the segment, but I don't know. It may come back or may not come back. What I will be doing is, if you like free stuff, you can follow us on Twitter, GameSpot Hotspot, and I will give free stuff like this Halo book, say, Primordium by Greg Bear. I don't know.
Open to a random page.
I'm on Tor books here. Okay. The old spirit again. Go to sleep, I muttered. Death has been sleep enough. Gamelpar had pointed out that my skin was not marked. I presumed that would reveal to Forerunners that I was having a recent arrival. My thoughts grew hazier and wilder. Having seen my luck of a mark, or my strangeness, could have triggered Minerva's urge to travel. I could almost imagine the instructions that Life Shaper had laid down in our flesh. See this, do that. Meet this visitor, take him there. Face this challenge, behave this way. ...
Wait, was that an ellipsis? Did that end with an ellipsis?
It did.
The first sentence
The
of the
first
book.
page, the
the
first
first
sentence.
sentence starts with an ellipsis.
After the acknowledgments,
Well,
of
sure, but I mean the
course,
acknowledgments, like-
Looked across the deck of the star boat at the didact. At the didact. Oh, okay. A massive gray-black shadow with the face of a warrior god.
Wow. So you can have this terrible
and
book.
Nebula award-winning author Craig Bear.
What the heck?
Anyway, if you want this, Twitter, GameSpot, HotSpot, that's how you can get it. I'll be giving this away tomorrow, and other stuff that people send me on promotional basis that I don't actually want. To our one listener in Mauritius, did not know your country existed until today. Mauritius is a country.
That's the country that's going to go away with global warming, right?
Oh, is it? I don't know.
It's an island?
That's
It's
the
an
Maldives.
island.
Oh,
off-
Maldives. Yeah, sorry.
It's the island off the coast of Madagascar. Itself an island.
Ah, okay.
Not to be confused with Mauritania, which is not a country you want to be confused with. I just want to point that out.
Okay. Well, I just found out also that Mauritius was the only known home of the dodo bird.
Really? I thought it was from New Zealand.
No, it's apparently Mauritius.
Who's on Wikipedia? Dodo bird.
This is all Wikipedia information, which is in fact correct.
It was the only known home of the dodo.
Yeah.
It says it right here.
I know, right?
It's on
Top of
Wikipedia,
the
so it must be
page.
true.
I need to cross-reference with the dodo bird thing and see if it mentions because I mean,
Go to the
this
dodo.
fanboy of Mauritius may have.
Oh my god.
No, it's in there. I checked
It's
them
right
both.
at the top of the.
It's been
it's the first sentence of the
cross-referenced
dodo.
accurately.
Of the dodo.
So he got both.
No, I just like it because the dodos are basically glorified pigeons. Like, had pigeons not had natural predators, like
Pigeon?
cars or homeless people, like that's what would happen to the
homeless
dodo.
people, the
or
natural
pigeon.
enemy of the pigeon.
Right.
They're friends.
I want to see a National Geographic
No, but actually, did you know-
documentary just showcasing like homeless people preying on pigeons,
Right.
In like
In the wild, pigeons in
wild
the
animal
wild.
kingdom style.
They're like homeless people are like cheetahs because they can burst fast, but they can't go the distance with
Oh
a
my
pigeon.
god. I should have left 5 minutes ago.
Really awful.
My friend Ocean Quigley, who actually was the art director on Spore, who I go rock climbing with, is the font of all scientific knowledge that I and he was saying actually animals don't grow when left to their own devices, they shrink.
Oh.
So like there were these miniature elephants found on this island because without any predators, there's no need to spend all that energy getting big. And so they just get smaller and smaller and smaller. So everything gets mini.
Unless you're an idiot dodo bird
Yes.
who did it backwards and
Yes.
is now extinct.
Yeah.
Anyway, that does it for. Wait, no. Do you like the HotSpot? We have more podcasts. The OzSpot, GameSpot UK GameSpot UK podcast, which they still have not renamed to
So
something reasonable.
when they're the camera's showing you,
yeah.
no, go back to him. I'm like tiny in the corner, and I'm kind of like
tiny in the
I'm kind of
corner.
like looking around the
First
thing.
time we had this set up, I didn't have one of these cameras,
And so I had to, like,
there
come
was
around.
it was like a double.
Where am I?
Yeah. It was super awkward because one of our editors, Sean McInnes, was in the foreground when I was trying to shoot.
It was
the guy
one of the
back there,
funniest
and he just,
podcasts ever, too.
He didn't know what to do.
Yeah, so I was like, do I move this? Do I come over here? This
Just
seems like it's invading your space. So over here, it's my
Pretend like
space.
Just hide behind this guy. It should be fine.
Then it's
put
kinda
yourself
weird.
in front of the CNET balls so that we can at least get some promotion in there. Anyway, that does it for this week. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you
Chris
so much for
Hector.
having me.
Spy Potter.
Spy Potter.
Spy
That's like-
Potter.
I'm gonna get sued by
J.K.
J.K.
Rowling
Rowling.
brings
Right.
us.
Jesus.
He's actually going in for the promotion now. Spyparty.com is where you can find out more information on this game. The FAQ is very informative. He goes into a lot of detail there. But yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks a ton. It's fun.
No problem. Kevin VanOrd, thank you for appearing.
It's my pleasure. I'm really pissed though that you didn't get to the famous 1905 film Baby's Toilet.
What was it? Wait, read
toilets.
the synopsis. How much time do we have left?
It's a.
It doesn't matter at this point.
Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Hang on.
Oh, and
Baby-
you weren't there with the baby's toilet.
I was reading a little bit ago, but it's apparently it's a 3-minute film.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was
And
long.
what
for
it
back
what
then.
it does is it's basically a short film showing a nurse giving a baby a bath, like from the beginning to nursing.
So it's like
So how?
instructional
Oh, it's like
video.
it's like a documentary, or yeah, like an instructional video. Exactly.
yeah, but it's meant to like have like some kind of like show you like the innocence of childhood and the
right.
bonds.
An instructional video with a
Yeah.
message. That's fair.
Right. Here's how you watch a baby.
All instructional videos have a message.
Well, I mean, with certain stuff, that's true. That is a fair point.
It's not a very good instructional video. If not.
With a message informing the human condition.
Yes.
Perhaps. Anyway, that does it for us. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. HotSpot out.